Mister, how do you operate this Twitter thing or this Instagram thing or whatever the heck? You're supposed to know all this stuff. Anyway, welcome back to the show.
Welcome back to this edition of Snowman in the Morning, and this portion is brought to you by Invader Coffee, fuel for the fearless. Speaking of fearless, one of the sports that I cover, which involves a lot of being fearless, is running. And I'm not talking about just sprints either. I'm talking about distance. Well, my guest on this Wednesday morning here during the first hour is a part of the women's distance medley relay, and the Garden State Track Club, led by my guest, came in first place with a time of 11:32. And she is also a three-time repeat champion. All kinds of good stuff. But I want to let her tell you how she got into running. Please help me welcome on the Invader Coffee guest line, the one and only Emily Rosario. What's up, Emily? How are you?
Good, you? Thank you for having me.
How did you get into running? What pulled you into that sport?
So, honestly, when I was 5 years old, my parents put me into like many different kinds of sports. I started actually in t-ball, so I was like, playing with all the little boys in Little League. I eventually went into like playing softball, and I was like really, really good. Like, if I continued in high school, I probably could have got a scholarship, but I think high school was kind of just like, Mom, Dad, I want to do running, and I never did it. Yeah.
So it was the challenge factor that pulled you in.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm attracted to really hard things, and running is super hard.
How much training is involved in distance running?
So let's start with, I do about 60 plus miles a week. And I have 1 day off every 2 weeks.
Holy cow, that's a very busy schedule to keep. And that's just training.
Yeah, that's just training, and then like in between like indoor, outdoor, cross country season, not more than 2 weeks max, depending on the type of break, but it could just be like 3 or 4 days, and okay, now we're training for indoors.
Wow. How do you keep up with such a schedule?
Honestly, I don't even know, but I think it's just like kind of like my addiction. Like, oh my God, if I don't do my run today, I'm gonna feel horrible. I think a lot of it is, of course, is like diet and sleep, which are like really important. But yeah.
How strict of a diet do you keep?
I'm not saying I'm perfect, right? But I do try to go for like my protein, my carbs, protein. And then even my snacks have some type of protein, like nuts or like peanut butter, milk in my coffee, any type of way I can eat protein. And then my carbs, like salad, especially like dark greens are like really good. And then on top of all, like, eating the right things, I have to take my vitamins, and I take about 12 vitamins a day.
I understand. I take a little pill cocktail myself after beating cancer. So tell me about the Millrose games and how big of an event that is, not just for you, but for women's sports in general.
Yeah, so I think the first time Millrose games was started was like in 1907. So this is like one of those like races where if you're competing in it, you're like, this is like the big like world champions, like
Hmm.
where everybody comes, especially to like New York City where indoor season is like big, very big. It's either New York or Boston. So like being able to compete in Millrose games, it's even like televised. It's like an incredible, incredible opportunity for track and field athletes of all ages.
And you are coming off your third consecutive gold at the historic Millrose Games. What is that feeling like, not just for you, but for your team that trains with you and really pushes you to do your best?
Like honestly, I was like flabbergasted and crying at like watching the rest of the girls compete in the same relay as me because like I already told you, like I'm doing like 63 miles a week. I'm hardly off
Yeah.
moving. I'm like, this is like my Bible, and to achieve such achievement, like not many people can say, hey, I got 3 gold medals in this race. And it's just like, it's such an incredible feeling, and I'm just thankful. Like I've been running all this time, and like wow, like finally it's like paying off.
Emily Rosario joining us this morning. And, I wanted to talk also and get your opinion on the state of women's sports in general today. How has it changed, say, from not even like 20 years ago?
Yeah. So I mean, there's so much change from, like being able to be a 100% woman and making sure, there isn't like anything conflicting, being able to win as a woman, that's been like really into the headliners. And then just, with everything getting better, organic food, eating the right things, having the right training times in general for women's track and field sports is just like getting faster and faster and faster. And we see it in the men's side too. And then overall, women's sports is like now, if I'm not mistaken, I know the women's basketball is watched more in college than men. So it's like
Mhm.
a
It
whole
is.
like, women empowerment is like it's a real thing now, and I'm happy to be part of
Does
that.
that make you proud as a woman to see the big advancement and the uptick in women's basketball and women's softball being watched as opposed to, I won't even say 20 years ago, I'll just say 10 years ago?
Yeah, honestly, and then like also with like NIL deals for like college athletes, like everything has changed so much with the amount of opportunities there are there for like college athletes, and I hope that keeps transcending into like open athletes like myself. I've been doing something for so long. How's that going to look in another 10 years? So,
Right. And it's something, women's sports is something I'm very passionate about. I've covered women's basketball and I've watched women's basketball, let's just say, since its Final Four, first women's Final Four in 1982. And I've covered the last three Final Fours. I'm going to do a fourth one this year. You know, it just seems to me still, it just still seems to me that even though there's an uptick in viewer watch of women's sports, there's still a downside in how women's sports is covered. Would you agree with that?
what do you mean? Tell me more.
In, ter- in terms of in terms of the visibility, getting out there, in terms of not having it be fully center stage as men's sports, it's still a little imbalanced to me.
Yeah, absolutely. And then not only that, right? It's just like track and field in general. Like the only time you hear about track and field is in the Olympics, and everybody likes to watch the Olympics and track,
Right.
but they don't want to see the journey, and that like breaks my heart because, like I told you, I train all year round. So everybody else is probably doing the same thing, you know? So, like, yeah, media and women, it needs to keep growing. It needs to keep going.
It really does. It really does need to keep growing. Emily Rosario joining us here on the program, talking about the state of women's sports, the state of the coverage of women's sports, and congratulations to you on your three-peat at the Millrose Games. Very, very excited for you, and I hope to have you back on the show very soon.
Thank you so much for having me.
We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll continue this Women's Wednesday edition of Snowman in the Morning. Back in the deuce.